And today I wanted to talk about a concept I call the unbroken chain. And I'm going to start this by saying, and you'll understand what I mean, but I'm going to start this by saying I live in an old New England town, been around a long time, relatively speaking, in terms of America. And there's a lot of old cemeteries. And what are you going to do with old cemeteries? You kind of expand them or add to them as a city can or a district or a town can, and then kind of just stay there. But I roaming around some of these old cemeteries, I've seen some interesting things. And one particular gravestone that stands out in my mind, it's carved out of I think it's flint. It's like slate. I think it's slate, and it dates back to the 1600s. It's like 1691 or something like that, I think. And it says right on it in like Old English, like the S's or F's. It says Captain Brightman killed by pirates. So what's that? 350 years ago, maybe. Captain Brightman. And our city still has memories to the Brightman family, I think, or maybe even to him. We have a Brightman Street and a Brightman Bridge, Brightman Street Bridge. So it's interesting. And I think to myself, this man lived his life, had his adventures, was the captain of a ship, some kind of a ship, and was killed, died. So he was, how do I put this? There is a chain going back to the beginning of time, beginning of human time. And everybody is a link in that chain, you included. You are a link in that chain, unbroken chain, going all the way back to the beginning of humanity. For all practical purposes, I'll say the beginning of time. And the thing that makes me think about that is, that gives me two thoughts. One thought is, and probably the more important thought for me, is that this gives you, me, and all of us a responsibility. A responsibility to reverence and to acknowledge the sacredness of life. This gift we've been given, and how all these people lived their lives, died, did their things, just as we're doing now. And one day, 350 years ago, from now, somebody will be hopefully looking at our grave markers. It's a weird thing to think about, but it's true. We have a responsibility to what is really important in life. And that has nothing to do with, I believe, nothing to do with Facebook, YouTube, cell phones, iPads, all these things, buying things, wasting all this. We're wasting all this energy on stuff that really isn't important at all. I have the luxury of being old enough to know that life before all this technology, and it was been for 20, 30 years, it's always been touted as a time saver, and it isn't. People are more rushed, more stressed, more depleted of endorphins, and have less time. So we have a responsibility, you and I, as a link in the chain, to continue it on in a way that's good, in a way that we revere it and we cherish it for the gift and the mystery that it is, right? I've said this before. Life is a gift, a mystery, a riddle, and an enigma all in one. And that's all but by design. It's meant to be that way. But we need to cherish it. So a second thought I have is about that, about, the whole unbroken chain thing is, and I'm kind of torn on this because my originally think to myself, the chain is unbroken and it started at the beginning of time and it goes all the way to the end of time. And we're a link in that chain, but it's possible that we're not. You and I, many people are not part of the link, part of the chain that goes all the way to the end of time. Our bloodlines die out in terms of our particular bloodline, for me, for you. And then what? It makes me think of a tree that blossoms. Let's take an apple blossom, a cherry blossom tree. You have the main branch the main trunk that continues on and up and forward. And then you have all these other branches that sweep out in different directions and come to an end and blossom at the very tips. And could be you and I. Just this little flower, this little blossoming flower that proclaims our life, hopefully in a beautiful way. And but that's the end of it. We're not part of the main branch, the main trunk that continues on. So, that's something to think about. But still, you have a responsibility to blossom, to show your beautiful colors and your flowering beautiful colors as best you can. So that's my thought. This had made me think of something else, but it's kind of slipping my mind now. Think about that and think about the fact that you're a link in a chain that does go all the way back to the beginning of human time. And it's staggering. Unbroken. Perfect. And one of the chains, or chains will continue to go on to the end of time, whenever that may be, if that is even going to happen, if there is an end of time. And then think about the responsibility you have to do your best with it. Make the most of it. And that includes stewardship of your life and responsibility to others and the world. Seeing with what's true and real and valuable with clarity. And that takes a little bit of effort because we're bombarded every day by other stuff, things that make things very unclear. It obfuscates. Everything's obfuscated. There's an awful lot of mongering of fear, enticing to buy. All that stuff is not important. You do have control of what you are and who you are and how you act and what you do. So consider that and don't worry too much about the other branches, the other chaining branches in the tree of humanity.